Hey, Emmaline, welcome to the sauce.
Hello, thanks so much for having me.
What a pleasure to meet you.
So nice to meet you too.
Thank you. Now, I said this before I started recording, and I mean it, that you obviously are just like you're like a rising star, like a meteorite. Or that was kind of contradictory, but you really are just taking over the universe very quickly, and it's the most beautiful thing ever, ever, ever.
Thank you. Thanks so much.
So, where were you born and raised?
I was born and raised in Anderson, Indiana.
Oh, really?
And and my parents still live there, so I'm there quite a bit.
Okay.
And yeah, I was born into a family that really loves music. My dad's a jazz pianist and an arranger, and so I grew up with music and
Mm.
a lot of jazz, a lot of like old soul and R&B and stuff like that. So it was just always in the house. And I started playing violin when I was 4 years old.
Oh,
And I was
wow.
classically trained from the time I was 4 until I was 19. And it wasn't really until I got to college, I went to Cincinnati Conservatory of Music to study violin performance,
Oh, wow.
that I really realized my passion for music was kind of shifting and wasn't really existing in the concert music world, and was more so kind of in the realm of exploring my own artistry and learning how to write my own songs and studying jazz and kind of incorporating jazz with modern music in a way that isn't really seen super commonly. So yeah.
You really are nailing that too. You're slaying that. We'll get to your songs in a minute, but
Thank
what you
you.
said just really does incorporate what you're bringing to this game, which is
Mm,
really, really great.
thank you.
Um, so you you started at a very young age. I mean, you're 25 years old?
Mhm.
Yeah. Well, it's nice that you kind of have music obviously in your DNA. When did you start singing?
It was one of those things where I always had a really strong knack for singing, and I always had a good singing voice. I was kind of like one of those kids where if anybody ever heard me sing, they would be like, "Why aren't you on American Idol?" Like
Oh,
that type of
okay.
thing.
Yeah.
And so that was always kind of just a part of my world, but I was
Mhm.
never formally trained as a vocalist or anything like that. But, truth be told, I think for most of my life, I always dreamed of being a vocalist and incorporating my violin into my music in a way that felt more authentic to who I was. But, I mean, it's a very cutthroat world out there, especially, in the realm of music. There's so much competition. And I think I was definitely kind of just discouraged by outside sources of people kind of telling me like, "Oh, but you're so good at violin, you should just stick with that."
Mm.
And there was something in my spirit that just always knew that I need to be using my voice, and I was always just that was always kind of in the background, and it wasn't
Okay.
until, like I said, when I was around 19 that I really decided to go for it and completely change my path. And it's so crazy when you really follow where your spirit has been telling you to go for many years and you finally do it, and then everything starts aligning. Like, of course
Yeah.
there's struggles, and of course, it's not like I just, was like, "Oh, I'm going to start singing," and then all of a sudden like I had a career. But it felt so much more organic, and the work that I was putting in towards pursuing this career as a vocalist and violinist and a songwriter, it just felt so much more aligned with
Mm.
who I was, and I think people could tell that, and that's why people caught on so fast and why everybody was really supportive, because I think people could just tell there was authenticity there.
Oh, absolutely. And isn't it great how you learned at such a young age to trust your intuition?
Mm,
It's not that easy for folks.
no.
Self-doubt and that inner voice that tells you, no, you're not good enough, no, you're not this or that. But for you to have really trusted your intuition from such a young age, look
Yeah,
how the universe conspired for you,
right. It's
right?
crazy. It's absolutely wild.
Well, it's really divine and perfect.
Agreed.
Honestly. Yeah. And with that being said, you starred in a movie called Sweetwater. Just recently was
Yes.
released, correct?
Yes.
Tell me all about that.
It was just such a wild experience to kind of immerse myself in a world that I never thought was really in the realm of possibility for me as far as the acting thing goes. I mean, I was approached by the director, his name's Martin Gigi, in the winter of 2022. And I got an email and he kind of described this character, how they were looking for somebody to portray the role of a 1950s jazz singer. And they really wanted to have somebody who was a real vocalist play the role because Martin himself is a music lover and he is a musician himself and has a very strong musical background. So it was important to him to kind of give the opportunity to somebody who was an actual musician rather than just have an actress lip sync to somebody singing in the studio. So I at first I was really nervous because I've never, I had absolutely no idea what I was doing. I've never acted before in my life. But there is something about me, which is I've always been a very like go get 'em type of person. Even if I don't know what I'm doing, I have a tendency to just like completely dive into like if I want to do something, okay, I'm all in. I'm going for it. I'm not waiting until tomorrow. I'm starting
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Good
And
for you.
so as soon as this opportunity arose, I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to go for it. I'm going to try it. I hired an acting coach in Atlanta and I had a couple sessions, got enough of a idea of what to be doing to kind of record my self-tape audition. And I submitted my tape and I didn't hear anything for a while. And I thought, oh, it's okay. This isn't really my thing. I'm not offended. I'm not an actress. It's okay. And then a couple months went by and the director reached out and was like, hey, we absolutely want to lock this in. We've just had to weigh all of our options and, everybody feels very strongly that you're right for this role. So it was just full speed ahead from there. I went to LA a couple different times. The first time was to work on the soundtrack because I was very heavily involved in the soundtrack and the music. Even when I wasn't on screen, a lot of my music was playing in the background. So we tracked 6 to 8 songs for the soundtrack and I did some violin work, we did some vocal work, and then I came back home. I live in Nashville, Tennessee. So I came back home and then flew back out and did all of the filming, which was just such absolutely a wild experience. And also when we were filming, I had the opportunity to work with the multi Grammy award winning blues guitarist and vocalist Gary Clark Jr.
Yeah.
And we had a whole scene where he and I were collaborating together and singing in this live performance blues club type of setting. And we actually tracked that live. So we didn't record it in the studio while the cameras were rolling. We tracked. So when people see the film, we were not lip syncing. We were actually doing all of that.